Sunrise launched in the summer of 2017 by 8 young people, all under the age of 25.
And we are building an army of young people to stop climate change and create good jobs for our generation.
People oftentimes think that our power comes from politicians or the people at the top of our institutions. But Sunrise Movement is about turning all of that on its head.
Our generation has witnessed the failure of political leadership. As long as we have been alive on this damn planet, we are angry at the cowardice of our leaders at a time when courage is necessary.
It's about saying that our power lies within people. It lies within the millions of people who understand this crisis and want our leaders to do something about it.
Democratic leadership, we are asking you to grow up.
Seeing young people standing up to their elected representatives in their offices and seeing those representatives fumble on their own words, it gave me a reclamation of power that I hadn't felt in a really long time.
Sunrise seized our attention, calling for a Green New Deal, a sweeping mobilization of the U.S. economy to end climate change and inequality. The movement is growing across the United States, and we wanted to learn how they're pushing the climate crisis to the top of the agenda in the 2020 elections. So in this first of a 3-part series, we came to Detroit to meet Sunrise activists in this city built on the fault lines of the industrial economy.
My name is Ray Norton. I'm 18. I grew up in and around Detroit. I moved around a lot as a kid. This is just one of those neighborhoods that characterizes the decline here. I was always questioning myself, what's going on here and why is it so messed up, where I'm living, and why don't I have this and why can't I go there? It's a big dividing wall. The other side is Grosse Pointe, and this is the Detroit side. The division is real. And you can see the divide when you just go over there, The difference used to scare me a little bit, because our neighborhood was it was bombed out and it looked like a war had passed through. And seeing the contrast between the rich and poor and just how severe it was and feeling how severe it was, that's what brought me to care about issues, to care about activism. I didn't always, let people know that I cared about this stuff. After a while, I realized that I didn't do that because I didn't have any hope in a different future, How could I express this pain in how I was living if there was no alternative to work toward? Climate change is a major problem that's gonna affect my kids and it's gonna affect me. There was just no way to vent that out.
You cannot differentiate issues around climate action from equity and economy. We've seen that for the last number of decades, people have attempted to address the climate issue by just talking about carbon and greenhouse gas emissions. It's actually about human life.
Dorothea Enrique Thomas watched her grandmother die of cancer in Detroit's most toxic zip code. She knows how the city came to be so messed up.
Detroit is known as the engine of the economy. It was a place where folks flee racial segregation and moved to Detroit intentionally to get these good jobs. They didn't know that this economy that they built on the Industrial Revolution would kill us, that we were literally being sacrificed because we were the most oppressed folks and we just needed a way of living. When the Big Three crashed, there was an industrial collapse that completely destroyed the economy.
The disappearance of manufacturing jobs isn't the only reason Detroit's mostly Black and brown neighborhoods are suffering. Dozens of industries, including fossil fuel companies like the Marathon Oil Refinery, pump greenhouse gases and chemical particles into the air, and nearby communities pay the price in high rates of cancer and respiratory sickness.
They've been allowed to target our city, target our people with the promise of jobs. So these heavy industrial facilities came in and said, for instance, Marathon, if you allow us to come to the city, we'll provide jobs. And then Marathon just continues to expand more and more. We have a country that is founded on oppressing Black folks to extract labor, to extract the lives of Black and brown folks, and extract from Mother Earth as long as you receive a profit. Our lives do not matter as long as there's a profit at the end of it.
UN climate scientists are clear. A global temperature rise of 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels will mean more poverty and illness, bigger floods, and deeper droughts. And to avoid it, we have till only 2030 to slash carbon and other greenhouse gas emissions. So after the midterm elections, Sunrise gathered in D.C. with some newly elected allies. It was time to push Democratic leaders to back a Green New Deal.
We needed solutions on the table that were actually commensurate and equivalent to the scale of the problem.
We have 12 years. We have 12 years to radically transform our economy and our society to stop this crisis and protect human civilization as we know it.
We teamed up with people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who had been running on a Green New Deal in her original campaign even.
I just want to let you all know how proud I am of each and every single one of you.
A Green New Deal is a vision for America to tackle the greatest crises of our lifetimes: economic inequality and climate change. It is a 10-year economic mobilization to transform every part of our society to stop climate change, eliminate poverty, create millions of good jobs for our generation in the process, and build economic prosperity for all Americans.
Right up there, that was the studio apartment we stayed in when I was about 7 and 8. I remember we were really hungry and we didn't have any food in the fridge. You know, the police would come to our house. I remember one time it was because our dog got out, and the police bring the dog back to our house and ran my mom's name, and she had a warrant for an unpaid ticket. So they took her to jail right in front of all of us. And for a few days, we were alone in the house. But I mean, that was a regular occurrence growing up. I do remember always looking at those buildings and just marveling at them. We're dealing with so much poverty. You look right outside the window and there's wealth, you know? I think it brings out a lot of frustration sometimes, and that's why I got involved with Sunrise. Like, when I seen those protesters at their representatives' offices and making that change, that really impacted me because I've never felt that power, you know? My mom's been in and out of jail my whole life. We didn't have power, we didn't have money. I mean, all we had was each other, really, and nobody else. And that's why I fight for what I do now, you know, the Green New Deal, because that brings that hope to people so they can latch onto it and, you know, they can move forward with it in any way they can. You know, I'm not here to tell people that this is the right thing or the wrong thing. It's just, you know, we need to be doing something in the course of bettering, you know, our communities. It's the only way I see fit right now.
In December, faced with Democratic leadership's refusal to back a Green New Deal, Sunrise turned up the heat.
Sunrise sent out a call to action for a protest at Nancy Pelosi's office. The point of the protest was to get the Green New Deal into the national stage.
Green New Deal! Green New Deal!
Me and 5 other really good people, we carpooled to D.C. There has to be at least 1,000 of us. So we all lined up along the halls, and then around 100 of us or so went into Nancy Pelosi's office. And there we sat in on the ground while her staffers were in the background.
That future no longer exists because Democrat leadership won't stand up for us.
Sat for about half an hour, and then the police came. And they shouted, "This is your first warning." They carried on with that until the 3rd one, and then they arrested all of us. I wasn't scared at all. I was high on the protest. I knew that what we had did was something that would, you know, be in the books, right? And that carried me through the whole ordeal.
Hey, don't block the sidewalk, please. Make sure people can walk through.
We really held together in camaraderie and solidarity. The singing we did and the voices we heard were so powerful that, it cemented our views on how we're gonna go about this crisis.
All of this actually led to Senator Markey and Representative Ocasio-Cortez releasing as one of the first pieces of action of the new Congress a Green New Deal resolution.
Today is the day that we truly embark on a comprehensive agenda of economic, social, and racial justice in the United States of America. That's what this agenda is all about.
My name is Aisha Sufi. I'm 19 years old. I'm a freshman in college. I'm currently a Sunrise Hub coordinator in Ann Arbor. I heard about Sunrise and I heard about their action at Nancy Pelosi's office in DC. I knew some people who were there, so I kind of sent them a message and I was like, hey, how do I get involved? In August 2014, there was a major flood that hit Detroit. It affected a lot of people in my life. It affected my grandmother, my aunts and my uncles. All of their basements were destroyed. There was sewage water all over the streets, inside their homes, destroying their furniture, destroying everything that they owned, and the local government didn't do anything about it. Renters either had to move or stay and live in those conditions.
In 2019, the U.S. marked its wettest year on record, and there were floods across the Midwest. Aisha's Sunrise Hub in Ann Arbor, a half-hour west of Detroit, was calling on Democratic Congresswoman Debbie Dingell to back the Green New Deal.
We want to know why she has yet to endorse that resolution. We see the urgency of the situation demands leadership, and we want Congresswoman Dingell to fill that step and take that leadership.
I think there are definitely some challenges that come with being a part of a youth-led movement. At least when talking to politicians, they can definitely be very condescending. They think that we're too young to have an opinion on this, even though we also live here. We also are experiencing this. Because of the newness of this group, there's kind of like this fiery passion that comes out, and we're taking ownership of the problems that we are facing, and we're no longer letting the people who are technically above us decide for us. We're taking control.
She is she asked me to thank you for your leadership on climate change and all that you do to bring climate change to the national conversation and just heighten it as an important issue. So, she's still taking all of the comments and thoughts of her constituents very seriously, and please know she really does appreciate your attention to this.
I was just gonna say, how much more time does she need? Because that's a luxury we don't have. People aren't realizing that we have such little time to fix this, and if we don't, more people will be displaced from their homes. More people will have to suffer the consequences of climate change. And it's not the rich white people who have to go through all of this. It's the Black and brown communities.
Back in Detroit, one of the newest members of Congress shares this sense of urgency. Rashida Tlaib is a co-sponsor of the Green New Deal resolution.
If you want to see what really doing nothing around climate justice in our country looks like, come to my district. I'll show you what doing nothing looks like. We don't have 12 years. Our 12 years is here today. 1 of 5 children have asthma in my district. I have some of the highest rates of respiratory issues, asthma hospitalization. This is not normal. This is not right. The Green New Deal embraces this point of recognizing communities like mine, the one I represent, the one I grew up in, as frontliners and as communities that actually deserve a just transition.
To bring the campaign for a Green New Deal to communities all across the country, Sunrise planned a series of town halls. They reached out to local organizations to co-host them. Good Jobs Now said yes.
Good Jobs Now is a Black-led community organization in the city of Detroit. This is the blackest city in America, and it's a very great privilege. But also, this is one of the blackest organizations in Detroit.
The question is how do we win? Dorothea, how do we win?
By utilizing our knowledge, skills, and talents to build a new economy. And we've been doing this Green New Deal work for the past 2 years. We recognized that it was a political moment where environmental justice could be at the forefront, but also it can help us create this triple bottom line of the economy, of ecology, and protecting what's home for us.
Right, how do we
win? How do we win?
By being relentless, by never forgetting the reason that we're doing this work, and waking up every day with that purpose, knowing why.
And we need to make a just transition to this new economy that is regenerative, that is sustainable, that allows us to have the quality of life that we deserve as human beings, that everyone should have access to clean air, clean water, equitable food, good, high-paying, union-backed jobs.
As a young person who's grew up in this climate of poverty, the only jobs I could ever claw at were hard labor jobs. The job I work now, roofing, I have no benefits, no insurance. I don't have a lot of dignity in my job, I would say. And work is a very important part of life, but it's all about who you're working for. I'd much rather be working to sustain my environment than working to enrich the profits of a corporation. A Green New Deal would implement a lot of new jobs that are needed, living wage jobs that are needed. I mean, we have to convert our whole economy towards renewable energy instead of fossil fuels. Providing those living wage jobs to people like me, that would dramatically change the way that I operate as a person.
A few days before the town hall, the Detroit Sunrise Hub has gathered to get the word out. Ray can't make it. He's at work on a roofing contract 4 hours away.
The main two things are just like reaching out to our networks and on Facebook and texting friends and all that.
So we're texting our friends?
Texting or Facebook messaging.
Okay.
I'm just like starting close to my network and then working my way out to like people I barely know.
Okay.
Hi, Erica. I am calling from Sunrise Movement in Detroit. We've got a new town hall movement that we've got going on, talking about the Green New Deal. And
Sunrise emphasizes that the climate crisis is impacting communities of color and working class people the hardest. But bridging those divides is a work in progress.
I think that focusing on a racial element creates another divide that we don't need.
I'm more united with my friends of color because I acknowledge the depths of the racism in this country. It's not creating a divide between us. The divide's already there.
Detroit is an 88% people of color populated city. So to have, this room of like 7 white folks making phone calls, it's, to me, really stark and not representative of the city or the movements that have been happening here.
Our mainstream movements for climate action have left a lot of people out. And if we want to build a just, sustainable society for the future, the movement to create it has to look a lot more representative of the very people that it will serve.
My truest goal is for our hub not to be the classic white environmentalists that come in with this white savior mentality of how we're gonna fix these problems that whiteness caused. It's a struggle. It's a struggle to say, like, actually, how do we just not repeat these patterns of the past?
Each action, each big event, like this Green New Deal town hall in Detroit, is a chance for Sunrise to build a more inclusive movement.
We want to hold a real dedication towards training and developing young people and people of color, working folks who may have never had the opportunity before to work in a political organization or movement.
Hi! Are you good? Yo, I have been hearing about you for so long. You are way taller than I thought.
We understand that in order to achieve this goal by 2030, having no fossil fuels, completely decarbonizing everything, we can't do it alone.
All these different groups need to come together and develop an intentional strategy to work together and to make sure that it's not just about an apocalyptic future, but it's about protecting the health of people now who are at the front lines of sacrifice zones all over this country simply because they're poor and because they're Black, brown, or indigenous.
We gonna rise up till it's won.
you have a message for people who are part of the Sunrise Movement?
I love you all. You give me strength. Even though you think, okay, here I am in Congress, you're continuing organizing people outside of the halls of Congress, and that's what's going to make this successful.
Welcome! Are you so hopeful for a Congress that not only looks differently, but feels differently, serves differently, fights differently, talks differently?
We're young people, we're bringing this fresh urgency to this fight. But we really recognize and we love and we value and we support the work that people who have been experiencing crisis and urgency for decades, who have been fighting on these issues for a very long time, especially in this city, have been doing.
Too often, Black communities get left out of movements like this. But I'm so happy that our time is coming.
We have to take the initiative in this fight because these politicians are taking a blind eye. They don't care. We have to make them care, and we can do that with our voices. We can do that with our communities, and that's what Sunrise is all about. It's about taking that fight to these people and organizing and doing that in a way that makes a positive impact on our communities.
Woohoo! Thanks, Detroit! God bless you and good night!
I think I'd say to those people who say the Green New Deal is unrealistic, it can't be done, or it costs too much, just look at where we're at. Profits are one thing, but sustainability is another. And our current environment is totally unsustainable. The Green New Deal is not an all-encompassing tool to wipe away all of our problems, because these problems have been building up from systematic institutional pressures, over hundreds of years. The Green New Deal is not a magic wand, but it is a first step.
In part 2 of our series about Sunrise Movement, we go to Northern California, where communities have found themselves on the front lines of the climate crisis.
Campfire, as you may or may not know, has been the deadliest and most destructive wildfire in California history.
We are paying for this crisis right now.
And we meet the Sunrise activists who found hope organizing for a Green New Deal.
We can't let this continue to happen. If there's anything we can do to stop it, we have to do it. Because I don't want anybody else to have to go through this.